Good morning, everybody, for episode 32 for
Wow.
2024. Crazy. Yeah, it's
32 shows.
yeah.
Wow.
Ever since we clipped the negativity.
Well, like
But
you say, 32 just doesn't even seem possible. I mean, when there's 52 weeks in a year, it's kind of hard to imagine. But I guess, does that fall in line with if you enjoy your job, you really don't have a job? And I say that respectfully because it doesn't seem like we've done 32 shows. It literally feels like a handful.
agreed. Good morning, everybody in the chat.
Yeah. Good
So,
morning, guys.
unfortunately, my privateer for MXGP is not here. The time zone got all wonky. It seems like that happens more often than not. So it is just you and I, Coach. And what I wanted to talk about first off was some of the stuff that Deegan posted on his channel or his socials here. But first off, here I guess we'll start with that because that's kind of the consensus of, in the background, we were talking about Hymas, how he had overall win. Finally can start trying to chip away at Deegan's points lead, or at least that's the goal. And then
Yeah.
now he's got an ankle injury, and I forgot that he tore his ACL in me, so he's been riding with a torn ACL. Is that the same leg? Is that the right? Do you know? Or is it the
I
left?
do. I do not know. I can only hope that it is. I mean, how frustrating would it be if you ended up with a busted up right ankle and you have no ACL in your left? Um, for those of you who have never been through rehab, and I'm assuming most people in the chat room have, when you've got the same side that's got a couple injuries, okay, the rehab's a little bit more focused, but it's what we call compensatory injury. If you hurt your right side, you load up the left. In this case, if he's got a jacked up right ankle, because if he got hit on the right hand side, if he does have a blown out ACL on the left, now the only good news is we haven't seen him kind of favoring it. And one of the questions I had for you today was, when we go back to Vial, we haven't seen him having that big limp that we saw a couple of races ago when he walked up on the podium. So I was kind of curious what your thoughts were on that. But I honestly don't know what's up with Hymas, if it's left, right, or if they're both on the right side, because we do know he got hit on the right side. And one of the questions I have for the chat room, as well as yourself, Johnny, is the only video I've seen of it is from the left side. I don't physically see where Hymas is cutting down on him. But again, I'm not saying that he didn't, but Deegan was pretty pissed off about it, obviously, and said it wasn't the first time.
Well, I mean, when it comes to those starts like that, usually when you have the front wheel on somebody, you have the line.
You own it.
And
Yeah.
from there, it's up to the other guy to shut off. That's the whole thing that happened with Hunter and Vince Freeze. Vince had the line, Hunter didn't shut off, and it took Hunter
Painful
out, right?
consequences. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
this is the
exactly.
thing that happened too. Like I said it on my live stream that Hymas cut down and Deegan ran into him. And here we'll let me
Well, that's
show.
cool, though. Succeed said that there was drone footage. So thank you, buddy. I haven't seen it. But obviously, looking through the goggles of Deegan, if he felt like he was cut over. But
Yeah.
thanks for that.
So
Succeed
this
by
is
force. I didn't know that.
on his story here. So if Deegan is hitting the foot and the pipe of Hymas, which means he didn't have the line. Plain and
Right.
simple, Hymas had the line. Hymas is in front of him, but Millville is one of those crazy tracks where on TV it just doesn't do it justice.
No, that first
Where
turn is so fast.
it's basically a hard 90 is what it is.
Yeah.
And it comes up so fast. It's not this big, nice, round,
It's not like
180
Glen
degree
Helen.
corner.
Yeah. It's not like Talladega corner where you just can carry momentum through. I'm surprised there's not more carnage in that first turn. Because like you said, if you've never been there, the way it kind of slopes up and then it goes to the right, and the track was a little bit different than when I was working with Spencer Daly, and I was actually working with the Martin brothers. The track's changed a little bit since I was working with them, but that first straightaway is deceptively long, and it kind of drifts uphill, and then it goes to the right, and it just inevitably is going to create a bottleneck there. I'm surprised there wasn't more carnage in all four motos, to be honest with you. How fortunate was it when you watched Deegan come over and kick this pipe that it didn't just snap off?
Yeah,
No,
that's
I was really
what
surprised
on
because
that?
that thing was freaking at 90 degrees. You know what I mean?
Is that a pro circuit pipe or?
I think they're FMF, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, yeah, it does kind of look like an FMF. Here, I'll try to pause this right at the time here.
Hey, and think about this though, Johnny, and I'd be curious to see what the chat room thinks. You watch Deegan when he finally gets his bearings straight and he's looking at all the bikes coming. He is so fortunate he didn't get center punched. Not because it's Deegan, it could have been Shimoda or anybody else, because you saw Shimoda got caught up in that as well. He unfortunately had like that 5-minute fall where he runs into the pack and then he just kind of just takes forever to finish the fall. But man, can you imagine if somebody, almost like the way that Deegan hit the bike that was down, just kind of center punched it and goes over the bike and then just right into Deegan? That could have been much, much worse. I love the way Deegan jumped up and he was kind of dancing a little bit. He did a good job.
Dude, talk about the internet, man. Like, Chance cut down on me and wrecked me. Deegan's a clown, man. There's no respect on the internet, which is crazy. I guess it has its moments, but damn.
Well, the thing I find funny about the internet is you can have differing opinions, but why do we immediately go into name calling and character assassination and everything else? That's the part. It's a problem with our country as a whole. Is you can disagree with somebody, but it doesn't mean that you have to be so.
Well, you don't have to end it with like
I hate
let's
you.
Fight.
You're a dick. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here, nothing looks wrong here. It looks like Hymas, his body positioning is great. He is weighting the outside peg. He's got his ass crack on that outside corner. Deegan isn't completely stuck into turning as of yet. He's still accelerating, but Hymas is definitely already pivoted and he's ready to accelerate, and he's got the whole shot. His front wheel is, Deegan is at his foot peg here. So all right, still there. Like,
if you could find that drone footage that Succeed by Force was talking about, it'd be interesting to see, because did Hymas cut down at the precise time that Deegan ran into him? I mean, we could split it.
It looks like his front end is washing, because keep in mind, this is Moto 2 after a bunch of mud.
Yeah.
Okay. These guys have the cheater tires on the back. They've got I don't even know which MX version of it is, but it's the sand paddle tire, which Dunlop, why even have other tires? You should just have different compounds of your sand tire, and that's it, because everyone just loves your sand tire.
Yeah. I agree with the real JD though. It's just racing. It's typical first turn. Because it's Deegan, of course, it's getting a lot more hype. But I do agree with the real JD. It's racing, right? I mean, it's just no different than when Jordan Smith was pissed off at Deegan and tried to punt him in that left-hand turn. And like you said in your analysis video, Deegan was a full half a bike length in front. So if you hit him, of course you're going down. You hit him from behind. So remember when you had a lessee that punted Tickle off the track? He went way, way, way on the inside and then just hit him dead center and ended up taking them both out. And like in this case, you can see there's enough of a bike length in front of Deegan that Hymas is going to own the situation. But I don't think there's any no harm, no foul. Now, if Deegan feels like he got cut down on, isn't that part of racing? And like you said, if you've got the front wheel, you own the race. So
yeah, but I don't necessarily think that this was cut down on. This to me looks like front end is washing and you're trying to hold your line. Because if you look what happened now to his body positioning, now you have Hymas. Now he's centered on the motorcycle. So he's not riding on top of the motorcycle to prevent this bike from washing out. He is like settled in as if he's settled into a nice, solid, deep rut, where if we look at Deegan is now on top of the motorcycle and he's got advantage over the motorcycle. So where he could lift that bike up with his hips if it starts to wash. So right now, this is a mistake by Hymas. And then boom, Hymas puts his foot down to make sure he doesn't crash, but guess who's right there? Who's ready to run over? Boom. And that right there basically kicked Deegan's. It's like if you're road racing or something and you're doing 200 miles an hour and then all of a sudden a banana peel comes out in front of you, you're out of there. and that was all it took for Deegan to crash. But that was gnarly for Hymas. But he put his foot down there to keep himself from crashing. If he was more on top here, well, I'll watch that one more time and then
here's one of the questions that I have, Johnny, is if he put his foot down and the wheel rolled up it, wouldn't it have caused Deegan's front wheel to come up off the ground? I'm kind of confused how there's a couple comments here.
His front wheel did come up off.
Oh, did it? Okay.
Slightly.
Gotcha.
But this was okay. So here we go. Pause. So Hymas, I just missed it, but his body positioning was good. Now that front end is pushing. He puts that foot down to catch him, and see, look, there's Deegan. His wheel is up off the ground by.
Okay, there you go. Well, like Nick in the chat room said, though, is his knee or his ankle tweaked just because of the dab, or would it be? I would think it would be a combination of the dab and the wheel running up the backside of the boot.
The dab didn't look that bad. It looked like having the other motorcycle hit him is what caused the damage. And hopefully it is just some torn ligaments or something in his ankle. It's nothing that requires surgery, but still that's going to take a while to
please don't take this out of context. What I don't understand is the bike is, so Hymas is turning right. You would think with the integrity of those boots, it's hard to imagine that hit would have been enough to get enough medial torque to actually damage that ankle. What do you think about that? You see what
I don't know, Coach. The last time I was riding a bike, I stuck my foot down in a rut, and the twist came from behind.
But I understand in a rut because you're anchoring the foot and then it has something to torque onto. The way that foot was hanging out there, if it got hit from the inside, and again, we're splitting hairs on the physics of the impact and the torque on that ankle, but I'm just very, very curious. See, I'm with Mr. LIK, and I apologize, Mr. if I'm saying that wrong.
He's wearing Tech 10s. I think both of them are wearing Tech 10s. They're great boots.
Yeah,
but I mean, you've got an inertia of 350-pound force running at you, and now your foot is placed, and then you got somebody that's basically running into you. So it's like hitting a wall.
Like Mike 303 said, though, I'm wondering if it's not let's say it's not as bad knee. Could we have tweaked the knee and not the ankle? Or are we hearing that it was definitely an ankle injury?
I'll show it in the next thing, because in my live show, I thought it was his ACL, but I don't know if this was already the ACL that was torn or not, but
he definitely pulled that foot up like, ouch, there's no doubt. Mr. 303 again had a good point. He says they're saying it's the ankle, but he doesn't trust it. Maybe it is the ACL.
Well, that's the thing about professional sports.
Okay, Mr. L303 said the left knee is the one that's torn. So now we've got a torn ACL on the left, and now we got a jacked up either ankle or right.
Okay, so ACL. Let's listen to what manager Lars had to say.
That Chance started losing the front, stuck his leg out.
Yes.
And then caught, and Deegan was right there and hit his leg and whatever.
Yes, and I saw some photos in the press tent. It looked like the front end was going,
and
then he stuck his leg out. It's not the knee injury, though.
No, it's an ankle. Other leg. Ankle.
Okay, which is not great, but
from that.
Yes, not great, but at least it's not the knee.
Yes.
Or I don't know. Maybe that's still not good. I don't know.
Nothing broken.
Oh, you already know this?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they x-rayed him in the Alpine Stars thing. So
yes.
Nothing broken. Bone bruise, most likely, with a good sprain.
Yeah.
And, hopefully no ligament damage. I think we might have to get that checked. But it sounded like that was promising, but he couldn't put any weight on it. But as soon as he hit the first jump, he's
away. Yeah.
I swear that Chance started losing.
All right, so let's give him the benefit of the doubt, and he's telling the truth.
Yeah.
Potentially, maybe it's just the bone bruise and potentially a gnarly sprain. But if that's true, even with some of those, even if he stretched or tore some of those ligaments in his knee, from there, it might be 2 weeks, 3 weeks before he's feeling better. I know if I'm speaking from experience with some of the stuff that I've done there, it could be 6 months before he starts feeling better.
Yeah, excuse me. When you're dealing with a tendon, it's much more frustrating because it does, pardon me, does not have good blood flow. In the physiology world, we always say you'd rather have a broken bone because of the high volume of blood that goes through it. It'll heal much quicker. Tendons and ligaments, as most of the chat room has already experienced, when you tweak one of those bad boys, it's a long process, especially with your ankle. Pardon me, because everything
Beauty
hinges.
of the live shows.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. But that's the problem is, especially when you're dealing something like with an ankle, stepping out of bed, moving from point A to point B, it's that constant aggravation. And then if you try to, let's say you put yourself in a set of crutches, as we all know, that just jacks up your entire body. So that's where it becomes a catch-22 is when you are dealing with an ankle. We see this with runners when they roll their ankle. We've seen people that have rolled it like on a manhole and roll it so far that they don't actually tear any, they don't break the ankle. They get all those tendon ligaments to overstretch, and then you lose that stability in the ankle. So it's just a compounding of problems that happens. And with the fact that he's expected, because we have 1 weekend off now, right? Or do we have one more race and then a round off? I mean, if he's got a weekend off, that's the best thing that could happen for Hymas for sure. But if I'm not mistaken, I think we've got a break coming up here, just 1 weekend, or do we have a couple more rounds?
I should know this. Continue talking.
That's okay.
I'll find it.
Well, that's a great point by Ryan V. Stem cell therapy, cryotherapy. There's so many more modalities now that can speed it up. There is a fine line.
Sorry, Coach.
No, go ahead, bud. No, you're doing some research.
No. Whoa. There is a race this weekend. It is Washougal, and then a weekend off.
So when you look at like all the different modalities that are out there now, and this is not to get onto a subject that takes us off subject, but a lot of modalities that are out there actually are not fixing the problem. They're just masking the pain. So we have to be very careful with that. When you get into things like hyperbaric chamber, absolutely those bad boys work. When you do massage therapy, it works. It doesn't fix the problem, but it speeds up the recovery. When you start taking something like a cortisone shot that unfortunately just masks the pain, those are all situations where at this point, and we say this like when we go to something like a multi-day race like Loretta's, sometimes we have to do things that wouldn't be deemed as healthy, but you've got to do what you've got to do to get through the next 5 days. It's like Murphy's Law at Loretta's. The majority of the injuries happen in practice on Monday and the first round of motos on Tuesday. So am I going to say, let's say that I've got a parent, they've spent a year getting to Loretta's. Yeah, we're going to jack little Johnny up on ibuprofen to mask the pain to get through the week, but that doesn't fix the problem, and it's not the healthiest thing to do. But we also have to respect that we're there to win the championship. So this week will be the hard week for Hymas. Hopefully he's able to come back. Like we talked about in the backstage, I just can't imagine being in his camp last week, euphoria, first win, nice bonus, everything's going good, momentum seems to be coming your way. And then 7 days later, it's like it all just ended in a split second. I mean, that's what we love about our sport, right? There are no guarantees. Look at Tomac, just on the G out. What was it, 2 rounds before the end of Supercross, and he's out. So that's the beauty of our sport. I love the Instagram reels where no disrespect for those who love soccer, but the Instagram reels where like the 2 soccer players touch each other and they flounder like fish. And they show Deegan doing the helicopter and getting back up and running back to his bike. That's what I love about our sport. It's such a badass sport.
I saw one of those reels about Trump getting grazed by a bullet. And
yep.
This is a moto channel, but
yep.
that is that was
messed up
to see. Yeah. I'm looking for, because I should have already had this, but for the outside assistance for stuff, because that's another. Okay, he had another look at this.
The soccer players are pathetic. I love that comment.
But watch how he like kicks his pipe.
That's just unbelievable. Props.
Dude, he's totally looking down.
Yeah. He was after it. Now, this question came up, and they even talked about it on the show, that they had a pipe in the pits. If it did break, would he be allowed to do it based on the text or the technicality in the rule book, or like how would that be
What,
deemed?
swapping the pipe?
Yes, sir. So if he kicks it and that silencer breaks off, right? You know it's going to be louder than heck. Would he be required by technicality and rules to come in, or would he be allowed to finish the race even though it's against sound and all the other? But because it broke off just in a race incident.
Well,
What would
supposedly
be
that
deemed
pipe
as?
could be tested for sound too.
No,
So
I'm saying once he kicks it and it breaks, right? Who would think that you would have your pipe go to a 90-degree bend and then you kick it, and then it pops off like an aluminum can? You know, you bend it a few times and it finally tears off.
yeah.
If he did come off, would he be required to pull over and have it, or pull off and be replaced, or would they allow him to go without penalty because of it's a racing incident? Do you know I don't know the rule book. You're pretty good on that rule
Oh, because of you're talking about like afterwards checking sound, and since he doesn't have a silencer, the
Yeah.
sound is.
Because, you know, sometimes they'll check when they come off the track. They've tried getting people that way as well. Because, and then here's something else I thought about, and I'd be curious to get the chat room because we have some really kick-ass people in the chat today. They're really engaging, and I appreciate that. You know how like when you bend a piece of metal, so imagine that you've got the pipe that's round going into the silencer. It got bent to 90 degrees, and then when he kicked it down, you've got to imagine there's got to be a little bit of a kink. How did that bike still run as well as it did for him? Am I explaining it okay? Someone in the chat say yes or no if I'm making sense or not. You have a round pipe that's going out to a silencer. It gets bent to 90 degrees. When you kick that back straight, it's not going to be perfectly oval or round going back. And if you know anything about sound waves and the way that those pipes and silencers work, like I'm amazed that bike ran so damn well. I mean, Deegan rode his ass off, but I was really surprised. I was like, when he kicked it down, if it didn't break off, you still are going to have that kink. And wouldn't that be a huge robber of power? Maybe some of the mechanics in the chat room and lots more back pressure, compression. Yeah. And Nick, wouldn't that screw the power of the bike up? Or again, I'm not a mechanic and I'm not an engineer. I don't want to act like I know what I'm talking about, but I have studied pipes enough.
Well, jetting of the motorcycle, everything, it would change some of that stuff, especially at that level.
And the reason why I ask, there will be a kink as long as there's decent airflow. Okay, that makes sense. So here's the thing that was hot enough not to bend with. Oh, see, there you go. So guys nailed it. I didn't think about the temperatures. That's why I'm not an engineer. But so here's the question that I have is, Deegan rode the wheels off of that bike. Is this just the Midas touch that the Deegans have right now? Everything they touch turns to gold? Because if that was anybody else, right? That pipe's at 90 degrees, they kicks it, pipe breaks. Subframe's destroyed, especially the way that he goes flying over the bars, kind of like what you did in your analysis show when his bike compressed and then it sent him into a helicopter ride. You know, he lands on his feet like a cat and he's back running. Are we just in that phase, like with McGrath, everything he touched turned to gold? Like think about his pipes. His pipe is at a 90-degree bend and it didn't break when he kicked it. I was just blown away by that. Now, to Ryan's point, could have been just because the temperature was so hot. But yeah, props to FMF. I agree with Carl there. That's why he's been using the pipe since '78. I mean, it goes. You got to give props where props are due, man. That's a hell of a kick.
I'll keep looking for this, but when it
and
comes,
do you know by chance who hit him that bent the pipe up? I tried watching that. Not that it really matters. I was just curious if somebody saw that. Because you saw Shimoda laying on top of everybody, and I couldn't quite tell who hit the bike that pile drove the pipe straight up. But think about the odds of your bike could hit the pipe and bend the pipe up, but that bike didn't get stuck underneath the fender and in between the wheels. It's pretty crazy.
So there's Hymas. Yeah, he didn't. He just was getting a clean hole shot. Boom, there goes. Who's the rider behind? Is that Vial? No.
I can't really tell because it's once his bike is down.
Maybe it's after it. Yeah,
he's down.
It's somebody mid-pack here. Dun, dun, dun.
No,
but are they going to go?
Mr. 303 said that James, when he was looking at it, was talking about the fact that Hymas was kind of leaning down. So we've talked a lot about that first turn already. But props to Deegan to go from damn near dead last all the way back. It's
my deal is
statement.
Okay. Who's the next guy that hits his bike?
That's what I couldn't see.
Is that Rider D? I think Rider D is the one that took
But
his.
if you look at the pile, look at Joe is now laying on top of that pile. So I was trying to figure out when he ended up in there.
Okay, but it looks like Rider D is the one that hit that pipe. So there's
Wow, Loki had a good point. Constricting the airflow can make the bike run harder and possibly blow up. And to think that Deegan didn't blow the bike up. He took a bike, let's say it did lose a little bit of horsepower. Let's give some props where props are due. And he still rode the freaking wheels off that thing.
yeah, who knows if he's got bent bars or whatnot. Look at
Unbelievable.
all the outside assistance on here. And looking outside assistance.
But isn't outside assistance, I thought it was just warranted in the first turn. That's why they all stand there.
Yeah, I know, but wouldn't it say that under outside assistance in the rule book? Wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that would be a good point.
Is forbidden at all times.
Okay.
Except
So,
when the assistance is given by flag marshals.
Wow, Guy said that his clutch was bent as well. Goodness gracious, what a beast! So yeah,
they can only repair the motorcycle in the mechanics area.
Yeah.
And they must.
Well, like Nick says in there, how much of that was outside assistance versus how much making sure somebody wasn't hurt?
Okay. All right. Here it is. Assistance by crew members is permitted from the starting gate up through the whole shot line following the start of a moto on the first lap only. So there's the answer right there.
Okay.
And assuming that the whole shot line is not right around the first turn, but it's actually the second turn is probably where that whole shot line is. So
well, you know what, Johnny, you bring up something that I never really thought about. Where do they put that whole shot line? It's never right there in the apex of the first turn. So now that makes more sense as to why, because they recognize, okay, where's most of the carnage going to happen? Right there. You know, look at
after the first pivot point.
I mean, look at Loretta's, right? Where does everybody drift? They all drift to the infield, that right-hand sweeping turn. And, you know, they've got the whole shot line right in parallel with the mechanics area. So now that makes a little bit more sense. It'd be a better fit for what the AMA rule book guidelines say.
And I think I saw something on the internet too about Deegan feeling somewhat, I don't know, taken advantage of or just tired of all the hate he's been getting.
Who's
maybe
that?
I can look for that too, because that would be the first sign that we've seen any sort of weakness when it comes to social media for Deegan. Because no excuses, dude. The dude is answering every call and is owning it. You know, even someone like me that wasn't a Deegan fan for a long time. I mean, he's worn on me, and it's through his results, just period. His actions sometimes seem speculative. However, his results, he's always been able to back it up, and he's got a pizzazz to it. And so it's unfortunate to see that kind of stuff. Just like that first comment that got 500 likes talking crap about him. It's just rough. And what do you think Deegan going to 450 next year?
Very probable. Very probable.
Do you think maybe that's why Justin Cooper is having such a hard time nailing down a contract with Star, is because they're like, hey, we're going to have 3 450s?
100%. I mean, it's just musical chairs, unfortunately. And I don't think anybody would argue. I'd love to get Lucas Myrtle on here, but there's no doubt. I mean, Deegan is going to get probably one of the biggest contracts our sport's seen right now. Jet sitting on the largest contract our sport has ever seen. The only person that I think that's going to rival that is going to be Deegan. And 450. And just so people who, here's a question. Go for it, Johnny.
Yeah. So just had a super chat here. So what are your guys' thoughts on Dan Benedict?
Daxton Bennett.
Is he cooked from training, or is he feeling the pressure from lack of results? Thanks, Fana Moto. Appreciate the support for the channel here. Coach, you are all about physiology, so I'll let you go with this one.
Fan, this is a great question because there's a lot of elements that are integrated in it. Johnny, I apologize. How many rounds of racing have we had from January up to right now? I don't know the number
I
off the top of my
believe
head. I
this
don't want to
is,
misquote it.
gosh, this is 25, I think
Okay.
here, but I'll check it. You continue with the answering.
So if we state a fan's question there, racing 25 races in, I think, 27 or 28 weeks, there's just no way that you could look at that and say it's not a fatigue related issue. Absolutely 100%. But where you're on to something that's much bigger than you may even realize is the amateur scene does not prepare these guys for such a grind. I've been very public about this. If you're one of my clients and you're 15 years old right now and going pro in 2 years that the race series is going to run every year from January to October, we can build the physiological durability to get you ready for that. These guys that are racing right now had no choice. It was sprung on them. And if you know much about physiology, you can't just flip a switch and all of a sudden have enough durability, strength, perseverance to go 10 months worth of racing.
Sorry, Coach, excuse me. It is 24 rounds as of right now. But for Daxton, that's not entirely true because he hasn't done all 17 rounds of Supercross.
Exactly.
So he's got
and that's
minus that by 7.
But that's the other side of the dynamic that makes it so difficult. If it is a fatigue related issue for somebody who raced half the rounds of Supercross, look at the fatigue of the 450 guys that did all of the rounds that we're talking about right now. And to Fanamoto's point, I think the pressure is completely different. Even if you're somebody who's on a pay-to-play program, which I know that's how it got started for Dax to be OnStar, which that's how most of those rides begin. Deegan would be the only exception, is that, you're going to pay and you're going to get a chance. You're going to get the best equipment, but those opportunities are very, very short. Usually they're about 6 to 8 months is all you get. This is why you saw, and I'm drawing a mental blank, somebody in the chat room help me, the one that just left and went to Europe for one of the MXGP teams that left Star. I'm thinking Romano, and I know that's not it. Somebody in the chat room help me out.
Oh, the kid. Jesus.
Yeah, the young kid that just went over. And so
when you MX2, and then he was also racing the
Canadian,
the MXE, I think, class,
MX3 or something. Thank you, Gavin Towers, the real JD, killed it. So when you look at Gavin Towers, you look at his amateur career, pay to play, wasn't producing the results. Pretty straightforward. We're not going to renew your contract, so he's going to go someplace where he gets paid. When you look at that's how a lot of these programs are designed right now, where you have wealthy parents, grandparents that can get you into that network of pay-to-play programs. If you can produce the results, then it goes to you're not paying, but it's bonuses only. And then if you're doing really well, then it'll be a small salary and then bonuses. It's not a surprise that Levi Kitchen would leave Star with no salary to go race for Pro Circuit with. And if you know Mitch at all, Mitch's relatively decent base salary. Most everybody makes about the same. And he's like, if you want to be wealthy, win races. It's plain and simple. That's always been Mitch's mantra since day number one. I've always agreed with it. No disrespect to any of these guys making tons of money, but on my side of the world, when somebody's making a boatload of money, complacency settles in. They don't have that fire in the belly, because now Jet is a very unique one. I mean, he made the most money last year. The amount of money I'm hearing that he's making, upwards of over $10 million last year. How do you keep somebody motivated when at 19 years old you made over $10 million in the season? Now, I think
look at Josh Hansen. Look at so many other guys that once they won their first championship.
I hate to say it. And if you talk to the agents behind the scenes, the agents are pulling their hair out because they make some money and they go buy 2 Lambos. That's what Josh Hansen was known for. He literally went down and bought 2 different Lambos. So when you look at the fact of how do you create fire in the belly? How do you keep somebody that will fight and race to the finish line? Well, like Mitch does, if you win, you make good money. So Levi leaving Star to go to PC, one was to get a small salary. And let's face it, how much better is the PC bike than the Star? How much better is the Star bike better than the PC? I mean, it's so negligible at this point. And we've talked a lot about it on the show, Johnny. There was a time when the Star bike, like when J-Mart was on the Geico bike and J-Coop would just pull them. It was pretty obvious the discrepancy between the bikes then were big. Now, over the last 3 years, that spread has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller, to the point, like if we were to go look at the percentage of hole shots on the Star versus the PC bikes, indoors and outdoors, East Coast, West Coast, to put it all together, I would imagine it's pretty similar. So,
Well, the Pro Circuit bike used to be
was the bike
cream of the crop as well, and so.
But it's interesting, the paradigm shift. But going back, first of all, thanks for supporting the channel, MotoFam. Really appreciate that. I think it's going to be a combination of both. Unfortunately, the amateur scene does not do a good enough job getting these guys prepared for the grind physically and mentally. And I think that's another reason why Johnny Deegan is such a polished gem, because his dad he did it completely different.
Well, he's been built for this. It's been go, no break, because even all that social media stuff is no.
Deegan said it in the Gypsy Tales podcast. We did our research and we knew that they didn't know. Brian was on Gypsy Tales saying, we put together kind of like a checks and balances and said, this is where we need to be if we think we're going to be competitive. And as Brian said, their preparation actually put them ahead of everybody. But how would they know that until they lined up? Mm-hmm. Now here we are a year later talking about it like the kid rides a beat up bike. He rides a bent bike.
He's turning into a Carmichael. I'm just straight up going to say it. Carmichael's been known for saying that he was not as talented as somebody as like a Dungey or even a Reed or his rival Stewart, but he just put in the work. And when preparation meets opportunity, that's when success happens. And Deegan has been the photo child for that quote.
Do you think Deegan doesn't have the talent though, Johnny?
No, I'm not saying he's not talented.
No. I'm not accusing you of that, but I'm saying, do you think his hard work and grit is superseding his finesse on the bike?
I do.
Okay.
Let's just say if somebody like Jet worked as hard as Deegan, he might have more undefeated. He might have gone all undefeated in Supercross as well. Because if I had to pick the two, I would say Jet is more talented than Deegan, but I would say Deegan has got more grit to kind of push through all the naysayers type of a thing. And that's not taking away that Jet isn't a hardworking. I just believe that Jet, things come easier for somebody, and on a scale, okay, because I'm backpedaling here because we know Jet is one of the hardest working guys in the sport, but if you just had to put them apples to apples, I believe Jet is the guy that busts stuff out first. Deegan will look at Jet and almost like a mentor and go, okay, that is what can be done on a motorcycle. Now I'm going to do that. And it's going to be super cool to see once those guys are racing head to head. I don't think Deegan is all of a sudden going to be able to just beat Jet and Sexton. It might take a few months, few races to do it. Because if we look at even in the 250 class for him, he went from mid-pack futures to then winning futures. Yeah, bad luck, to then jumping into the Supercross series and struggling, and then eventually jumping through hoops and boom. And I think his confidence is what really is a determining factor of his success as well. Is he believes that he belongs out front and that he can just wear somebody down. And that's where I feel Carmichael and them should be. You should not compare Jet and Deegan together. I think it's more of a fair comparison to compare RC to Deegan. That's where I was going with that.
No, I think your point's well taken. And I think you need to add another dynamic, and I'd be curious to get your perspective because you raced at the pro level. This is strictly my biased opinion.
At the pro level, but yeah.
Hey, you've got a pro card, and I've seen you ride. You're faster than fuck. This is strictly my opinion. I'd be curious to get your perspective. I think Deegan, when he was racing the futures, the bar wasn't high enough. No disrespect to anybody that was on the gate. Deegan, he always rises to the challenge that's put in front of him. And I just don't feel like the futures, it was kind of like you had to check the box. You had to appease the people to say that you did some futures races, whether that's the promoter saying, hey, look, this futures thing is so, I mean, we've seen the hokey commercials and the talking points where they're like, hey, talking to the camera about what you think about futures. And then you dote all over the futures program as if it's like the ultimate grooming ground to becoming a professional. It's kind of hokey. It's pretty easy to see straight through that. When you put Deegan up on the starting gate and he sees who's on that gate, that is typical Deegan style. I mean, he immediately, I think he upped his ante 100%, where it wasn't like he wasn't interested in futures, but it was just something that they had to check off. And I think we saw that with Deegan. Was he fast? Absolutely. But how many times have we all talked about, 3 weeks later, he comes out like the Deegan that we've seen and come to know and understand, like, you challenge that family, you better put on some big boxing gloves, because that family as a whole is going to come out swinging. And I think when he stepped up and he was legitimately on the 250 pro line, he upped his game. He will match whatever demands put in front of him. And I just don't think the futures, and thank goodness they didn't use the futures as a decision on whether or not he should go pro. I think the decision, well, we know the decision was already made.
Yeah, I think the decision had a lot to do with, regardless if he was, let's just say he was as fast as me, right? Just because of his following, they would give him a chance, and then it would be up to him to crash it and burn or what. But I 1000% agree with you. Maybe the futures and some of his amateur stuff, he might not have pushed as hard because it was like, I'm going to show up, I'm going to win. It's easy, right? Then you get into another dynamic. Sorry, coach, I didn't mean to.
No, I interrupted you. Excuse me. I thought you would pause. Go ahead. Excuse me.
When you get into an arena where, everyone is trying really hard. Everyone has a nutritionist. Everyone has a trainer. Everyone is putting in a crap ton of hours. Oh my gosh, these bikes are so much better. I better put my head down and grind. And I think he had an accelerated learning curve because of the people that he had around him. And we're seeing that now. We're seeing the work that he's done a year and a half ago come to fruition here. And
remember when AC did his first pro race and he said he came off the track and he said, everybody hit me like I slept with his girlfriend last night. And I just thought that was the ultimate quote of all times for somebody being plucked out of the amateur ranks way too early and put into the pro scene. And he's like, 32nd place guys hitting you as hard as the 4th place guy because you're taking money out of their pocket. You've got this, just that little innocent look of AC because he was so young when he got pulled in there. And then, going back to Deegan real quick, when I was working with Logan Best at the Super Mini class at Loretta's, it was badass because you had Dax Bennett, you had Logan Best, you had Hayden Deegan, and you had Casey Cochran. And that was the last time that I'd seen Deegan, like he was a pit bull in a fight. He wasn't going to lose come heck or high water. Daxton Bennett was way bigger. In fact, we used to talk about, it was scary to watch Daxton lean the bike over in the corners because his legs, I was waiting for him literally to break his knees. He was so big for that Super Mini. But I remember Deegan, it was like 4 badass dudes, and Deegan elevated his game. And I'm not saying he didn't elevate his game between Super Mini. That's not what I'm insinuating. But I'm saying that's the pit bull that I saw when I was, we were competitors against Deegan. And now you see Deegan goes to futures and he goes out and he races. But then you saw that guy at another level again when he went to that 250 class. And I don't see it slowing down anytime soon because he's still got he's got his sight and his teeth set on that 450 class. Well, I think that's why you're seeing such a beast right now. He's like, this is a stepping stone.
You open up a good point. His dad, Brian Deegan, if you compare him to Travis, who's the most talented between him and Travis? Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes without saying. It's Travis.
Yep.
Right. But how many times did Brian Deegan beat Travis? Well, there was multiple times where he did. And it was because of hard work and grit. So that is one of the perfect individuals to have behind you to show you, hey, I think you're better than me, but you got to work harder than me and watch what happens. And that is what we're seeing here. Small segue.
And also an invaluable piece is Brian's been there and done that. So he's already navigated, which a lot of privateers have to figure out on their own. Because think about it, Brian went from the privateer, ghost rode his bike, created an entire brand on Metal Militia. He's got the moto background. He's got the marketing background. He built something that didn't exist, freestyle motocross, and then built a business, Metal Militia. Can you imagine having that person as your mentor, much less your father? Point well taken, Johnny.
This is another point. How many pros that have won races that now have kids have also gone on to be incredibly successful?
You're about to see Nick Way's son be the next guy that's going to come from underneath
And maybe
a
Reed's,
successful
maybe
pro.
their kids.
I haven't seen as much on Tate as I have on Nick Way's son. No
But I mean,
disrespect to Tate.
Evan Ferry, but
No.
Evan hasn't done much.
He-
But I'm just kind of trying to do apples to apples here.
Absolutely. Sure.
Really, the only two I can think of is, of course, Deegan.
Mhm.
Okay. But prior to that would be Donnie Hansen and Josh Hansen. But other than that, I mean, James Stewart's got kids. Carmichael's got
Mhm.
kids. You know, Travis Pastrana's got kids. Like,
Well,
why aren't
unfortunately, they saw what the sport does to families, and they've seen what it does to your health, and so that's why. That's why they're not. I want to say, but I don't want to use the word not allowing their kids to race, but they're just like not the least bit interested in going down that road. And this is what's so hard with the paradigm shift, because I can only speak for myself. I don't want to speak for the chat room, but when my boys got old enough, I bought them TTR 50s, and then I got them TTR 110s, and then we got into the two-stroke world, and I tried to give my kids everything I didn't have.
Benson,
Everett's,
and yeah,
with Liam,
another one. Yep.
Yeah, that's a good. But isn't it interesting? That's an MXGP environment. How many of those have you seen in the MXGP side of things? You've got Everett's, and it's kind of like the same number on both sides of the ocean. It's very rare and few in between. And I think that's the hard part. I grew up with one motorcycle riding in the orange groves, running from the police officers to ride my dirt bike. So when my boys were old enough to ride, we went to an organized track. I was fortunate enough to be in the business where they could hang out with AC and Jordan Bailey, and they could hang out with people who were in the sport, but I didn't have to get them in the sport, because I personally, I'm just going to be blunt. I wasn't interested in chasing the amateur scene. I see what it does to families financially. I see what it does. It spreads them so thin. I see where there's a little bit of a duping that goes on, where the families feel like I've got to hit Mini-O's, Daytona, Spring-A-Ding, AZ Open, Cow Classic, Mammoth, Loretta's. And it just puts these parents on. I mean, Johnny, I don't know about you. My business does not afford me the opportunity to be out of the office for a week at Freestone, at Mini-O's, at Loretta's in 1 year. And I own my own businesses. What if you work for somebody and you're asking for 4 1-week blocks? That's eventually going to come out of your own pocket.
Well, that's why you see a lot of times, like, I think RV's mom took him to a lot of races. I think Adam Cincerillo's mom took him to a lot of races. But I mean, the resources are available for guys like RC and James Stewart, and okay, maybe
but they're
I'm
choosing not to put their money into it. That's why I'm saying the paradigm shift, right? So you have Ricky's mom and dad who banked on it. James's dad was a Coca-Cola delivery driver. James used to go to the races with Kyle Chisholm, and then his dad would finish his route, drive all night long to get to the amateur race. And then as soon as the races were over, Mr. Stewart would drive through the night, go straight to Coca-Cola, pick up his truck, and resume his deliveries. Their story is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have this money, right? And why is James not putting his kids into it? It's because he's like, been there, done that. Don't want to go down that route again.
I'm real close to Donnie Hansen because he was like my riding coach for a long time.
Sure.
And, he would always tell me, like, Johnny, why do you want to do this? Why do you want to do this? And I'm like, I want to make money. And he's like, Johnny, I've told you this before. How do you retire wealthy in motocross? And I was like, you win races. And he's like, no, stupid. You start off rich, because then you're left over with like 5% of you originally had. It's an interesting dynamic. And yeah, maybe I'm going to throw some speculation out there. Like, Stewart fell off the face of the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And he, I don't know, had to go through potentially a healing time where he had to fall back in love with the sport. And now we're seeing renewed James Stewart that is amazing at commentating and everything before. Like, yeah, he had the 7 gear, but other than that, we saw nothing from him for, it felt like almost a decade.
But by choice, to your point, but by choice.
Yeah.
That was his choice. He removed himself 100% from it.
And now is coming back and doing it his own way. And I think that's what's going on with Reed and his kids, is we didn't really see anything about his kids, but now Reedy's got more time for him, and he's like, all right, if you guys want to do this, we're going to jump and do this. My point is that, like, there's so many guys that have the resources to, experience is best when it's not your own, right? So that you don't have to. It's the reason as to why I believe Jet is so much better than his brother. I know, Coach, we kind of argue about this a little bit, is because Hunter had to go through all the trials and tribulations and errors, and Jet just got to sit back and soak all the information up, and then now he can improve on it. Well, when you have a dad like a Reed or a Carmichael or a Travis Pastrana or a Brian Deegan, dude, here's just this vast amounts of wealth when it comes to knowledge that you can be exponentially better than somebody that's just starting off. Like, I have no doubt that it has a lot to do with just the kids in general. But if you meet preparation with opportunity, so the preparation is the kid, the opportunity is the dad or family that knows what to do, boom, insert success.
Yep. Take it one step further, which is always interesting to me. If you look at like what Nick Way is doing with his son, Nick Way was a badass dude. I still remember him at Cowie doing so well, but he didn't have the same success as a Stewart or a Carmichael. And yet you look at now what Nick Way is doing with his son. How much of that would you chalk that up to the idea that Nick made it a very good distance, but quote unquote didn't make it all the way? And where I'm going with this is I'm amazed how many people will start a facility, and if that child goes to another riding coach, that rider is not allowed to come back to that facility. I could give you literally 50 people that I've heard that from in the last year. And if you look at something like what Brian Deegan did, Brian wasn't afraid to have Hayden be underneath the tutelage of somebody else. I mean, as recent as them going out and spending time with Tomac, just seeing how things are a little bit different and being open-minded to that and not being afraid of it. Like Brian said in the Gypsy Tales, we did everything. We did pit bikes, we did mountain bikes, we did pump bikes, we did BMX, we did everything. And like Brian said, we think we have chosen the right paths. We think we've put the right pieces in place. But as Brian said, we don't know until we go racing. We won't know until it's done. And I think that's something that this is one of the things we try to convey on our amateur motocross show is there isn't a one shoe fits all. There isn't a one pattern to determine success, because if that's the case, then you would have somebody like Kevin Windham who has his own facility. Then everybody should be winning Loretta's if they're at K-Dub's place because he was so good. And I think that's where one of the biggest vortexes is created in our sport is people, if you look at Matt Walker when he had Moto X Compound, everybody was like, well, if Matt won for Pro Circuit, he's got to be able to teach my child how to be number one, not recognizing as a parent that there's so many more nuances. Did you have the work ethic that Matt Walker had? Probably not. Did you have the balls big enough to go sit in Mitch Payton's office until you got an appointment with him? Probably not. Would you be willing to take your own money and fly out and literally bet on yourself the way Matt Walker did? So just because Matt Walker goes to Loretta's and wins 3 championships, it isn't in the water that it's coming out of it at his track. It's the technique plus the fitness plus the dedication plus, you just start adding up all the elements. I think that's one of the problems that we run into with these young parents is they think, oh, well, in my class, this facility won the championship at Loretta's, so now everybody gravitates towards that facility.
Coach, and they're looking for that experience, right? They're looking
for the shortcut. They're looking for the magical elixir instead of recognizing, because I'm trying to reinforce what you said about Deegan. Brian's like, try this, try that, go here, try this, try this. Kind of like when you were working with Donnie Hansen, and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought I remembered you saying it wasn't, Donnie never got offended if you wanted to get some insight from another riding coach. You were very vocal. Donnie's my riding coach. But you weren't afraid to listen to another riding coach, even if it was a little bit different opinion on stand up or sit down in a corner. But this sport it's I hate to say it, but it's the same polarization that we've seen politically. It's either all this way or it's all that way. Nothing could be in the middle, and we can't talk about anything in the middle. Standing up and sitting down in a corner is not an absolute. I know I'm preaching to the choir with you because you're freaking phenomenal at it. But to say that it's a one sheet, it's this way or the highway, I think that Deegan is a perfect example of when you open your mind to different ideas. He went out, probably learned a little bit from Tomac, maybe nothing even on the bike, maybe just the value of protein and sleeping. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm just
I'm
pulling
sure
random.
John Tomac probably taught him a lot.
Absolutely. But to your point, this is where I hope parents pick up on it. We talk about this on the amateur show all the time. What Brian is doing for Hayden is, Hayden, wake up, ride, cross-train, sleep, eat, and repeat. I'm going to deal with the gear deals. I'm going to deal with the social marketing. I'm going to deal with talking with John Tomac. And can we pick up a little bit of a nugget? Hey, why do you live at 6,000? What's Cortez? 5,000, 6,000 feet above sea level?
Dude, I'd have to look. It's in the middle of nowhere, but yeah, it's 5,000 to 7,000 feet.
Yeah. So you can bet Deegan saying, hey, why have you lived out here since day one? Probably something that John's going to be able to share with Brian. And now all of a sudden, let's say Tomac race another couple of years, you just handed that baton off. Would you be surprised if all of a sudden you saw Deegan emulating what Tomac's done? I wouldn't. He's already, think about what Deegan has done. And Johnny, if you think I'm full of shit, let me know. But I was thinking about this the other day. Brian Deegan is not living, but essentially training full time on Ricky Carmichael's compound. Stop and think about that. He's gone and trained with Eli Tomac. You don't think he's going to take a little of this and a little of that and then make something a little better?
Yeah.
Brian is so damn smart. Go to Carmichael's place and absorb the aura of the greatest of all time, right? Deegan's been willing to put in the work. I remember when AC went out to the goat farm and he's ripping on that KX85, and he even talked about, like, and I'll never forget the first time I pulled up to Carmichael's when I was working with Dungy, and you pull up and you see the legendary water truck with number 4 on it. If that doesn't give you goosebumps, then you're not a fan of the sport. If you see that cow head above the cabin, if that doesn't give you goosebumps, you're not a fan of the sport.
Coach, it's just interesting where sometimes I feel like this sport is so grindy and it has not as much to do with talent as it does to just raw discipline and determination. Because like, if you even look at somebody like an Axel Hodges, right, where dude is incredibly talented, the crap that he's done on a motorcycle with, I don't even, it's like a wall ride, aerial flip back down. Like he's done some crazy freaking stuff, but his racing career would have ended in shambles, you know? And his whole ideology was more of like, I know how to ride a dirt bike. I'm going to have fun on a dirt bike, but that isn't conducive for racing because you need so much discipline to be successful. It's not just about raw talent. And having Rhino on last weekend and him talking about that Loretta isn't an end all be all because the kids that win Loretta all of a sudden already have deals and everything. And the question that I didn't get the chance to ask him was, it was like, well, then how do you get deals? How do you get that gas ride, that Star Yamaha ride, so that you are going to Loretta? Because history has a funny way of repeating itself. And you didn't see Deegan win all sorts of local championships. You didn't see Tomac. I saw Tomac like once a year here in Colorado. He would show up for like the Pro-Am and he might race the state championship. Other than that, you never saw him, but he was the fastest guy from here. Andrew Short never rode from here. Ivan Tedesco out here from Mexico, never really rode out here. Jason Anderson's New Mexico guy, super close, never saw him. While I was sitting here just racing every weekend, those guys are focused on the amateur national. So it was interesting. Like, there's a format on what to do. You just got to follow it.
Well, but the answer to your question is, how do you get sponsors? How do you get, rides per se? We could do an entire show on this, but just the Cliff Note version of it. First and foremost, unfortunately, most riders go to a corporate partner, and we've got Guy Landon here who's been very vocal about the idea that he's willing to put marketing dollars into a rider, but all the rider does is come up and say, I'm fast on a motorcycle, so give me money, give me product, give me. Instead of coming to Guy and saying, hey, look, here's where I'm going to be racing. Does this fit into your marketing plan? We have our own amateur development race team. And I said it last week and I'll reiterate it here. In 2025, that team will now have been in existence for 15 years. I've never gone to a sponsor asking for anything. other than what is your marketing plan? And here's a list of everything that we're going to do. We're doing easy up tents. We're doing bike graphics. We're doing hoodies, t-shirts, hats, socks,
Coach, but
gear bag.
I don't mean to cut you off here, but how is it, do you think, that kids get rides if they don't win championships at Loretta? Like, is this...
But that's where there's two sides to your question. If you're asking about getting some support to offset the cost of going racing, instead of going out and saying I'm fast on a dirt bike, give me, how about saying I'm fast on a dirt bike, but what can I do to help market your business? If I can go to Guy Land, who's in the chat room, and I can go out and spend $100,000 on marketing, and everywhere I go and market, Johnny, if Guy's logo comes along with mine, well, let's say Guy puts $50,000 into my race team. Well, if I'm doing $100,000 in marketing, he's just saved $50,000. So now I'm talking his language as a business owner, where let's say he has $100,000 he was going to budget. He can put 50 in our team. He gets 100 out of it. He can take that other 50 and put it into another element of a rider. Buy 3 bikes, do this, go do that. So that's the first problem that I see on the amateur side is, and I hate to say it, but I'm going to call the moto parents out on this. My little rider's fast, so give me gear. Fuck you. How about you come to me and say, my rider's good. Here's our race schedule. Do you even have a partner in that area? Do you have a business partner in that area that I can invite them out to come out and hang out with me and my son? And you invite them out as they're your business partner, but you've invested in my team. Come out and hang out with my riders. I'll buy them dinner. I'll wine them and dine them. Well, now Guy doesn't have to get on a flight, go to Florida for mini O's. My team is there. Guy's like, wow, I spent 50 grand. I get all this merchandise. I get all this advertising, and I get to wine and dine at the track. And I may be too busy. Guy may be too busy. He can't fly down. I'll take care of him. Now I've served a benefit and I've alleviated costs for the sponsor. And then when it comes to getting rides, this is, and again, I could do an entire hour on just this subject. Where our sport is screwed up is when you go back and you look at when Team Suzuki was badass, Ben Riddle, Ian Treadle, Eli Tomac, right? You have all of those going on. Well, because Suzuki was investing, Ben Riddle wasn't paying to go race. Ben Riddle was getting a dozen bikes and getting a $50,000 parts allowance. And if you use any common sense whatsoever, if one manufacturer says, hey, we're not giving anything away, we're making the riders pay for it. Oh, wait, well, now Cowie's going to not do it because Suzuki's not doing it. And then because Suzuki and Cowie's not doing it, then KTM's not going to do it. Now the parents are forced into a position where they're having to pay to go race. And it's no different than the pros being willing to go race with shitty pro purse, but because they don't stand up for themselves, why would a promoter do anything different? If they're not forced, and I hate to use that word, but if they're not made to pay the pros and the pros are willing to pay to race and they're the show, you have the debacle that we're stuck in right now. That's why you have parents and grandparents that are paying to go race on a program. Why did it happen? Because the internal industry started talking to each other. Hey, we used to give 8 bikes and 50 grand parts allowance. Are you doing it? No, we're doing 3 bikes. Oh, we're doing 1 bike. We're not doing bikes. We're not doing parts allowance. Hey, but did you know that parent was willing to pay 50 grand, 100 grand to be on my team? So now you're running around. This is where moto parents have really screwed the pooch. They've thrown money at a team to say, oh, I'm a team XYZ rider, whatever color bike you want to choose. They're paying to be part of that program. Well, what OEM is going to go, you know what? You go ahead and keep your 100 grand. We'll just go ahead and take 8 bikes and a $50,000 parts allowance, and we'll just give it to you, Johnny, because you're a good kid and you came up and you were able to commandeer me into giving it. That's where we screwed the pooch. We totally think about college baseball. Think about college baseball. You're good at baseball. We're going to give you a scholarship for X amount of dollars. You didn't pay to come play college ball. You were good at college ball, so we gave you a scholarship in the way of an education. We're the only, I shouldn't say the only sport, but one of the few sports that we've completely screwed ourselves because people started saying, hey, my son and daughter, I'm not good enough to get sponsored, but I'll pay to be sponsored. And that's where it all went sideways quickly.
And I don't look at F1, the biggest motorsport in the world. A lot of guys don't get picked based off of talent. They get based off of my daddy's a hedge fund manager. and they can go out there and they can finish 15th or something and end up doing mediocre, right? So yeah, pay to play works out, I think, in a lot of different places. But if I'm speaking truthfully from my own personal mistakes, racing locally will not get you where you want to be. You're going to bang your head against the wall, because by the time you're old enough to be a privateer and get your pro license, you're never going to be picked unless you're literally top 5 in Supercross. If you're top 5 in moto, there's not enough money in moto. They want to advertise for Supercross, and the teams want to advertise for Supercross. So really, to set yourself up for some success is you need to go to those amateur nationals. I would say save all your money from racing locally. Go say, hey, we're going to take time off for the week, whatever it is, for Ponca or Mammoth, or used to be Lake Whitney and Loretta. Like, yes, they are expensive, but that's how it works right now. Then you can be seen. You're going to build a social media platform or something so that you can show, like, hey, this is what I can do for you, and somewhat follow in the footsteps of somebody like a Deegan. And and cry, gosh, some of the comments here are just not even gonna talk about it, because I'm giving good information on how to be successful rather than just spend mommy and daddy's money going to the local races where it's nothing. You're better off.
Well, I agree with you 100%, Johnny. And for those that have little snide comments, that's okay. We're always going to have those. You're only speaking from the heart. And the bottom line is, and I say this to my clients all the time, and I always say to my young riders, I'm not siding with your parents, but if you're not willing to put national level effort in, then don't ask your parents to go race the national. Stay local. If you want to be a fast local kid, there's nothing wrong with that. But the spending to race locally is a lot less than spending to go national. And I always say to the clients, especially the young kids, and I always ask the parents for permission because I don't want to overstep my bounds.
Relatively, coach, relatively, because if you go locally, if you race 25 races, you could have spent that money to do 2 or 3 good nationals, dude.
But I'm saying managing expectations with the young child, like when they get mad that mom and dad won't buy them a full-blown race motor, and then the young child, when I say young, I'm talking 15, 16 years old, right? You want your mom and dad to buy you a race motor, but you're not getting out of bed and going to the gym. You're drinking sodas and eating fast food. So to me, those are local level behaviors asking for national level benefits. And that's what I always say to the riders. If you are expecting out of your parents national level travel motors, then you've got to show the work that justifies them putting in. And that's called life, right? You only get out of it what you put into it. There's no free lunches. We can throw all the cliches in the world at it.
And here, I'm going to end it on this because my little girl just
good. Okay.
And coach, anyway.
Yep.
Again, speaking from experience, going to spend $6,000 for a built motor that blows up in 3 hours, that money would have been better spent going to a couple more nationals,
But in your defense, though, Johnny, the bikes are much better now than when you were racing. You had to have that $6,000 motor. You weren't going to be competitive.
I did not, coach. I did not.
No?
I did not. Like, the most successful I was when I was enjoying. I won. It doesn't matter what I won, but I was undefeated here in Colorado for a while, and I had a bike that eventually the hubs blew up on it because it had 160 hours on it. But that was because my race bike blew up, and I was making money locally. But my point is that right now we get into this have-not mentality where, oh my God, look at these guys, they've got so much more money than me, look at all this stuff. And it's like, just go ride your motorcycle, go to the bigger races, be seen in front of the sponsors. There is no support system whatsoever at the Nationals. You are not going to get sponsored by Oakley goggles or Dunlop tires or whatever at the Nationals. They're only there to support the factory teams. The Amateur Nationals, that's where you're going to be seen in front of those people and meet the right people. So stop racing locally, go spend your money, go get your butt kicked at the Amateur Nationals, spend all your time training and preparing for those few races and treat it like the Tour de France, but you don't need to have a practice bike and 3 other motors and 7 different. You just need to be at the races. If you're trying to pinch pennies, you pinch pennies, making sure you don't you have safe equipment, but not the best equipment. And sorry, I'm putting somebody in timeout that is in the chat room. And that's the way you should be done to get better. Something that I would have done differently there, and not trying to make it about me. I'm speaking to
you're
the
speaking
kids,
from
and
experience.
we're talking about how to do that. And
Well,
your last thoughts, Coach? And
no, I want to thank you for sharing your thoughts on it, because, like the old saying goes in the business world, those who don't have a plan to fail, right? And I think that's one of the things that hurts our sport is we kind of get into this idea, we love riding moto, and then our son or daughter is good at it. And then just because they become good, we kind of lose our brains and think that, well, what's the plan? It's just, well, no, the plan is I'm going to get sponsored. Well, like you say, how do you get sponsors? I love what Guy said in here a couple of weeks ago. He's got, both the money and the desire to advertise in the sport, but putting it on somebody who really understands. Guy has a business to market, and those marketing opportunities are designed to grow his business. Like every single sponsor, we're very fortunate. We have Precision Transport, we have HBI Auto. Our goal for those companies as outside investors in our team is to alleviate a lot of the work that they have to do. And that's the part that I see is missing. And I say it very humbly, we've never had a sponsor tell us no. But do you notice I've only mentioned we've got 2 outside sponsors? Because number one, I don't want it to be brandalism. I don't want a ton of sponsors on there. And I want to make sure that we're doing a good job for the sponsors that we do have. And then we can offer for our race teams, like we have HP Development that does our motors. We're working on a pipe deal right now. So now all of our riders will have literally they'll have a motor package and then a suspension package. And I don't care if you're what color bike you're riding, because I don't want to be at the mercy of the OEM. I want to be in a situation where if Johnny wants to ride X bike and Tim wants to ride this bike and Paul wants to ride this bike, I'm going to have the graphics that matches what our image is. Underneath the hood is going to be an HP motor, and it's going to be suspended in a way that Johnny's happy with it, whether it's a KTM, a Honda, Kawasaki. I don't care. I want to give Johnny what he wants, because I want you to win races and feel comfortable and be safe. But then at the same time, I want to have a pit where I can entertain Precision Transport, HBI Auto, all of our partners at Complete Med Solutions, Energy Fuel Partners, all that goes with it. There's got to be a paradigm shift in the way that you approach it, instead of I'm fast, so give me something. It's never going to work. And that's the same thing with our team selection. For 2025, our team selection is going to be completely different.
And it's mindset. Mindset is changing that deal, right? You're
100%.
absolutely. But
Johnny,
Coach,
thanks for being authentic, brother, and go take care of that little girl.
No.
She's the love of your life. It's awesome.
Sincerely appreciate your knowledge on this stuff. So, hey guys, make sure you go follow Coach Rob and his podcast. He drops 2 episodes every month. One about amateur motocross, and the other one is about racing in your 30s. So
yeah, don't forget about Meet the Coach. Hopper's out there. Meet the Guest. Johnny's the current.
Yeah. A little bit more
deep
of
nuggets.
A bitter. I'm constantly trying to progress and be more positive.
There's no bitter. I asked you questions and you answered them, and I appreciate that for the sake of the listener.
And I love Anamoto using the terminology HODL, And guys, the comment section has been great. You guys have been awesome. You guys added a lot of value to the show, and I'm glad
100%.
we were able to spend some more time on there. And so thank you guys for all of that. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and follow. We'll have more guests on here every week. It's at 10 a.m. Eastern time. So appreciate that. And the ride video is coming probably tomorrow. But as always, keep it WFO. I'm coming to get you, sweetie. I've already made breakfast. All right. See you guys.
Peace.